In 2025, the world may witness one of the most significant geopolitical shifts of the 21st century, the expansion of BRICS. 4 years, BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, has positioned itself as an alternative to Western-led institutions like the G7, NATO, and the IMF. Now, with new members joining and stronger alliances forming, the balance of global power could shift dramatically. But why does BRICS expansion matter so much? How could it reshape trade, security, and global diplomacy? And most importantly, what does this mean for ordinary people across the world? Stay tuned, because in this video, we'll explore how BRICS in 2025 could change world politics forever. BRICS is a political and economic bloc originally made up of 5 countries: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Together, these nations represent over 40% of the world's population, around 25% of global GDP, some of the world's most important natural resources and supply chains. The group was initially formed as a response to Western dominance in institutions like the World Bank, IMF, and G7. Unlike those organizations, which are often criticized for serving mainly Western interests, BRICS aims to give emerging economies a louder voice in world affairs. Over time, BRICS has developed its own financial structures, like the New Development Bank, NDB, to reduce reliance on Western-controlled systems. But for years, critics have argued that BRICS was more of a symbolic alliance than a practical alternative. That could now change, because in 2025, BRICS is expanding. In 2025, BRICS is expected to officially welcome several new members. Countries often mentioned include Saudi Arabia, one of the world's largest oil exporters; Iran, strategically located in the Middle East, rich in energy; United Arab Emirates, UAE, a global trade and finance hub; Egypt, key to African trade and the Suez Canal; Argentina, resource-rich South American country; Ethiopia, one of Africa's fastest-growing economies. The inclusion of these nations could give BRICS massive influence over energy markets, with Saudi Arabia, Iran, and UAE; global trade routes, with Egypt's Suez Canal; agriculture and natural resources, with Argentina and Ethiopia. If this expansion goes through, BRICS will not just be a group of emerging economies. It could become a superbloc controlling key resources, markets, and supply chains across multiple continents. The timing of BRICS expansion is crucial. The world is currently seeing growing tensions between the West and the global South. The Russia-Ukraine war has pushed Russia closer to China, while straining its ties with Europe. Many countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America are frustrated with Western sanctions, financial pressure, and trade policies. By expanding in 2025, BRICS sends a clear signal: the world is no longer unipolar. Instead of one global power, the US, and its allies, dominating, BRICS is creating a multipolar order, where different regions and blocs have influence. This isn't just about politics. It's also about money and trade. One of the most talked about issues is whether BRICS will challenge the dominance of the US dollar. Currently, most international trade, especially oil, is conducted in dollars. This gives the US enormous power, because countries need dollars for trade and reserves. But BRICS members, especially China and Russia, want to reduce dependency on the dollar. In fact, there's been discussion of creating a BRICS common currency for trade, expanding use of local currencies, like Chinese yuan, Indian rupee, or Brazilian real, in global deals, building financial systems outside of Western banks and SWIFT networks. If Saudi Arabia and UAE, 2 of the largest oil exporters, start selling oil in non-dollar currencies, that could seriously challenge the petrodollar system that has supported US power for decades. Even if BRICS doesn't fully replace the dollar, just shifting part of global trade into other currencies would be a historic change. The rise of an expanded BRICS also challenges global institutions like the IMF, World Bank, and WTO. For decades, developing nations have complained that these institutions are controlled by the West, with policies that often hurt poorer countries through debt traps, austerity programs, and unfair trade rules. BRICS, with its new development bank, aims to provide loans and investment without the same conditions. If the expanded BRICS can offer real alternatives for infrastructure, energy, and trade finance, countries in Africa, Asia, and Latin America might increasingly turn away from Western-led banks. This would reduce Western influence over global development and increase the leverage of BRICS nations. Of course, BRICS is not without problems. Expansion brings challenges, internal differences. India and China have ongoing border disputes. Brazil often aligns more with the West on certain policies. Adding new members could make coordination even harder. Economic gaps. While China has a massive economy, countries like Ethiopia and Argentina face debt and poverty challenges. Balancing such differences is not easy. Decision-making. With more members, reaching consensus could become slow and inefficient. Western pushback. The US and EU are unlikely to stay silent. They may respond with new trade deals, alliances, or even sanctions to counter BRICS influence. So while expansion could make BRICS stronger, it also risks turning the group into a divided coalition with too many competing interests. Despite challenges, BRICS expansion is part of a larger trend, the rise of the Global South. Countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America are no longer satisfied with being followers in a Western-dominated system. They want more influence in shaping the rules of trade, climate action, technology, and global security. For example, African nations want more say in development financing. Latin American countries want fairer agricultural trade policies. Middle Eastern nations want independence in energy pricing and diplomacy. BRICS expansion gives them a platform to push these demands. Western powers see BRICS expansion as a potential threat. The US argues that BRICS is trying to undermine the rules-based international order. The EU worries about losing influence in Africa and the Middle East. NATO sees closer ties between Russia and China as a challenge to its security role. In response, the West is strengthening alliances like the G7, AUKUS, and Quad, as well as pushing for new trade agreements with developing countries to keep them in their orbit. This competition could shape global politics for decades. For regular people, BRICS expansion could mean more trade options between countries without needing dollars, cheaper goods if alternative trade routes reduce costs, new opportunities for students, workers, and entrepreneurs in BRICS countries, but also risks of instability if economic or political competition between blocs leads to conflict. In short, the future could bring both opportunities and uncertainties. In 2025, BRICS expansion could mark the start of a new multipolar world order. With countries like Saudi Arabia, Iran, UAE, and Egypt joining, BRICS would gain control of key energy markets, trade routes, and financial power. If successful, this bloc could challenge the dominance of the US dollar, provide alternatives to Western financial institutions, and amplify the voice of the Global South. But challenges remain. Internal rivalries, economic differences, and Western resistance may slow progress. Still, one thing is clear. World politics in 2025 will not look the same as before. The question is not whether BRICS will matter, but how much it will reshape the future of power, trade, and diplomacy. So, what do you think? Will BRICS expansion create a fairer world order, or will it deepen divisions and tensions between East and West? Share your thoughts in the comments.